Okay, where does the 12 go?
Bottom right.
Okay, it's a positive 12. What do we do with these two things? Correct. Now, we need all the factors of 12x squared. 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Okay, so we have to add to get to a positive 7x. So positive 3 and positive 4. Okay, now, what times what gives you x squared? Okay, x times a positive 3 gives us the 3x, and x times positive 4 gives us that positive 4. Now, so our factors are x plus 3 times x plus 4, and that equals 0. Now, what do we do with each of the factors to solve? Set each one equal to 0. Okay, so we subtract 3 and we get x equals 3.
Negative 3.
We subtract, it is negative 3. We subtract 4 and we get x equals negative 4. So there's our two answers. Okay, what do we have to do before we can go to the box and factor on this one? Does this equation right here look like that one?
Get that GFC.
We need to set it equal to 0 first, which we do by adding x squared. So we end up with x squared minus 2x minus 8 equals 0. Is there a GFC? No, no GFC, so we go straight to the box. GCF, thank you, greatest common factor. I said it wrong, you're right. Okay, so what goes right here? What goes right here? Negative 8. What do we do with these two? Okay, so we have 1 and 8 and 2 and 4. We have to subtract to get to a negative 2. There we go. Negative 4x and a positive 2x. All right, so what goes right here and here?
X and X.
All right, x times what gives me a negative 4? And x times what gives me a positive 2x? Okay, so we have x minus 4 times x plus 2 equals 0. What do we do now? Set each one equal to 0.
What if you could do it from just seeing it on the box?
You need to write it out. Okay, so we end up with x equals 4 and x equals negative 2. Okay, so set that aside. Now, it says where or what are the possible solutions to a quadratic? Okay, any solution to a quadratic is on the x-axis. It's on the x-axis. Okay, it could be called an x-intercept, an answer or a solution, or it could be called a root or a 0. Your calculator calls them zeros because it's where x equals 0, or where y equals 0, rather. Calculator. Okay, the calculator calls them zeros. So, how many solutions does this one have? No solutions. Don't put 0 and leave it there because I'm going to think you mean 0 right there.
Is it
Put
because
no
it
solution.
because it doesn't go on the other.
It doesn't touch the x-axis. No solution. Okay, how many solutions does this one have? One solution, or root, or zero. Those words are interchangeable. How many solutions does this one have? Two solutions. Okay, so a quadratic is anything with x squared.
So,
Your parent function is y equals x squared. This square is what makes it quadratic. Okay?
so the third one's quadratic.
They're all quadratic. This just has imaginary solutions. This one has a double root. That one has two solutions. Your coefficient or your exponent was 2. That tells you the maximum number of possible solutions. You can have 0, 1, or 2 solutions. Okay? So it could be any of those. All right, so set this aside. And we're going to practice today what we did before we left, just to get your brain back in gear. And then starting tomorrow, we're going to hit some new stuff. Okay, you don't need to be talking. Okay, so number 5, you need to set equal to 0. So you have to add 56 before you start doing anything. What do we have to do on number 6? Okay, we have.
-2.
In general, I'm going to tell you your life will be easier if you leave your x squared term positive. It just helps to eliminate any problems with that negative sign. So I'm going to say add 3 and minus 14. Okay? You could work it that way, but it's going to make the factoring a lot harder. So if you can get your squared term to be positive, you're going to be much better off. Okay? All right, that one's ready to go. What do you do on something like this? What's the middle term?
And then -8.
There you go. You remembered the shortcut. If you don't remember the shortcut, it's got a 0x minus 64 equals 0. Okay, what do we need to do here?
Add x squared.
Okay, that one's good to go. And this one, what do we need to do on number 8? Okay, now on 4 and 8, we're not going to use the box. What are we going to do? We don't have 3 terms.
Right.
You need to pull. You need to pull what? GCF. Okay, and then set your factors equal to 0. So get started on that. Okay, yes.
I can't think of the only factors I can think of for 14 or 72. But that would
Put it in the box because that 2 changes everything. Okay, put it in the box. X times what would be the negative 3x? 2. So it needs to be minus. And then x times what would be the positive 6x? That's not right anymore. That should be a negative. That should be a negative. They have to add to give you a negative number. So negative 3x, negative 6x. So x times what would give you that negative 6x? Just the x. X times what gives you the 6x?
This is a one, right? One times one is so six should go. What can you go over both terms? So x, open your parentheses, and write when it's up. What if you put an x? Pull an x out of both terms. You don't box it. Equal zero. Set both factors equal to zero. This equals zero and that equals zero. This should be plus 56, not minus. So we're working off of 2 plus 15x plus 56 equals 0. This, so x squared plus 56. And then these two, we have to add to get to 15. So we're positive. And we'll just have it over. X times this, does that give you this? Mm-hmm. X times this, does that give you that?
Oh, that's supposed to be a close.
No, it is supposed to
It
be.
is right.
Okay, no, X times, not that, this is right. So you set this one, and you set this one. Sorry, it's a mess. Okay, this isn't making sense, put it in the box. Set your box. Hang on just a second. Yeah. Right, so, it's x squared, and put your 18 here. Okay, and what do you do with those two? That's right. Now, is that your factors of 18? Whatever factors work, they have to add to give you a -9. So what that's telling me is that they're always a negative. To get, you have to add to 9. Hang on just a second. Okay. You got that? That's times this. So that means you have 0. Looks like that. Okay, you didn't set this equal to 0. Oh, there's the sun. You have to add, well, there again, that's the same problem. Okay, you can get it right here. So they have to subtract and give you 3. So the sign's like. You didn't pull a GCF out, therefore you're missing a factor on both of those. Okay, so pull your other factor out.
It's supposed to be X.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then I should do that.
No question? Sure. These aren't right. So you're not gonna answer the question and trying to figure it out? For GCF. For GCF. So X times what's in parentheses, X plus 2. Because you pull an X out of both of those. And then set each one equal to 0. You doing okay? You gonna do
I can do this.
Where did 10x come from? That should be a 0x.
I know.
And then minus 64. I'm not sure what happened in here.
This one.
Good, you fixed that. That was the only thing you had left. Okay? This times this is not that.
Hey.
Times this. Well, this is what you want.
Well,
Never can be a number or a letter.
well, this, yeah. This is called the X.
So
No,
right now,
Rachel,
X is in parentheses. Okay, X times what gives you X squared?
Okay. So,
1X.
set the equation to 2x
Okay,
squared
and X times what gives you
plus
2?
3x minus 14. I
I
already did that. I already wrote it down.
There's
Did
plus
that? I erased it. No, it was.
So each one is 0. Yes. Okay, no GCF. 2x squared plus 3x minus 14. That's what you need to work from. 2x and 14, we're on the right track, do that.
14. Minus what you had?
Or I think it's
Can
make it bigger. No. You multiply these two together and you get what?
$14.
2 times 14 is 28, negative 28 x squared. And write down your factors of 28.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I remember opening that in the water. I would do that. That's for the reason. No, it was. Nope. Of what kind?
I want you to move everything this way. So.
Yeah, actually,
This is what we're looking at. Okay, so you have negative
I'm gonna have fun
56.
today.
All right, we've got to subtract to get to a positive 15. So that's gonna be each here.
That's why I'm gonna play this.
Okay, so that just means this is positive. and that
Good
one's-
day.
I like first base when it gets much better.
Okay, quiet please, there are folks still trying to finish. All right, so I want to run over these. I know most of you are done. There's still a few who aren't quite done. But I want to go over them, make sure everybody has the process. So if you find a mistake, you need to fix it. Flip it over on the back or whatever and write down the correct way to do it.
I bet you I got all of these right.
Okay, So we have x squared and positive 18. We multiply that, we get 18x squared. Now, before I look at anything else, I'm writing down my factors of 18. 2 and 9, 3 and 6, and that's pretty much it. Okay, now I come back here. I have to add, which means my signs are the same, to get to a negative 9. That's going to be 6 and 3. So negative 6x and a negative 3x. Now, a lot of y'all can fill in the box fine, and then some of y'all are kind of losing it right there. Okay? Everybody seems to get x and x. That's good. X times what gives me a negative 6x? X times what gives me a negative 3x? Okay. So we've got x minus 3 and x minus 6, and that equals 0. I don't care if you feel like it's unnecessary or not. You need to do it because that's where silly mistakes get made. Okay? And you have made some yourself. I make them when I do that. Okay? Now, so we said we had to move the 56 over. So when we move it over, what we're looking at is x squared plus 15x plus 56 equals 0. No GCF, so we go to the box. We multiply these, positive 56x squared. All right, so we've got 1 and 56, 2 and 25, 26, 27, 28. And 3 doesn't work. 7 and 8 for sure. There might be another 1 or 2. Okay? We have to add, which means our signs are the same, to get to a positive 15. 7 and 8. Plus 7x plus 8x. Okay? The only way to get x squared is x and x. X times what gives me a positive 7x? X times what gives me a positive 8x? And we set each one equal to 0. Now, if you want to skip the minus 7, minus 7, minus 8, minus 8, I don't care about that. That's fine. Everybody at this point, that should be a natural step. Okay? And x equals negative 8. Questions? Did you correct it on your papers if you need to? Okay? Now, so this one, I'm really hoping that you learned the shortcut that I taught you, a square minus a square. So we take the square root. We take the square root. And we put a plus and a minus, and we're ready to go. Okay, so there are those two. All right. Now here, Lane had talked about moving this over and making it negative, but when you go in the box with a negative up here, it tends to mess stuff up, and it makes you have to think way too hard. That's why I said make it so that your x squared is positive. So plus 3x minus 14. Okay, so this is what we're working with. We multiply, we get negative 28x squared. Okay, so 1 and 28, 2 and 14, 4 and 7. I have to subtract to get to a positive 3. That's going to be these. So we've got a positive 7x and a negative 4x. You're right. Now, the x squared part is easy. But what I noticed is that a lot of y'all just totally forget that there's a 2 there.
Put the 2 on the top. And you multiply
Okay.
by -2 on
The 2 needs to go here because it can multiply by a -2 to give us that -4. You are correct. Okay? You've got to figure out what you're using for this. You can't just ignore it. If you ignore it, it's going to be wrong. Okay? X times what gives me a positive 7x? Plus 7. Questions? Does everybody have it written down? Okay. All right, so here, no GCF. We either have 1 and 4 or 2 and 2. I need the 1 and 4. We have to add, so the signs are the same, to a positive 5. Okay, x times x is x squared. X times a positive 1 is x. X times a positive 4 is positive 4x.
Miss Cooper, what if you accidentally put them in the wrong spot?
If you flip-flop these, it doesn't matter as long as your signs are right. Okay, that's a good question. So x plus 1 equals 0, and x plus 4 equals 0. So -1 and -4. Okay, here we had to move the x squared over. We go to the box. So we've got 28x squared. One and 28, 2 and 14. Okay, we have to add to get to a -11. So yes, in this case, we've got a -7x and a -4x. Okay, so x times x is x squared. X times a -7 gives me the -7x. X times a -4 gives me the -4x. So positive 7 and positive 4. Okay, GCF. We pull an x out. X times x is x squared. X times a positive 2 is a positive 2x. Then you set each one equal to 0. Zero and -2. Here we talked about moving the 5x over. Pull a GCF. So x equals 0 and x minus 5 equals 0. So there are your two answers. Any questions? Okay, so factoring to solve a quadratic is one method. Tomorrow we're going to start learning, I believe, the quadratic formula. Okay, so if you want a preview, quadratic formula. You might want to write this down so that you have seen it before. Is it too light to see? Is that the problem?
I just can't see it all.
Oh, okay. Okay, so x equals -b plus or minus the square root, make it a big one, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, now you're going to need to memorize that. because it will not be given to you every time. Okay. I think that one is on the formula chart. It's some of the other formulas that aren't. Okay. So if you think about pop goes the weasel, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
I've never in my life done that.
Well, you just have. Okay. So, however discordant, but you need to memorize this. Okay. Now, I had another math teacher friend that said that negative Billy couldn't decide, he was plus or minus about whether he wanted to go to the party under the radical because he was squared, and she just kept going on, and I'm just going, that's way too much to try and remember. So if you come up with something better, fine, but Pop Goes the Weasel works really well. Okay, so your homework is to memorize that. Okay, memorize the quadratic formula.
I got you.